Hi, I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is the Candice Malcolm Show. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us for our live stream last night. We had a fantastic broadcast. We were joined by some big guests, including Anna Poilievre, the wife of Pierre Poilievre. My co-host, Kian Bexty, was recording live from his father's campaign. His father was elected as a member of parliament last night. So we're going to spend the show today going through and highlighting some of the good news from the election campaign. Because if you look on social media, if you're watching the legacy media, they will be pushing this message that the Liberals are back, that they won a decisive victory, and that Canadians gave them a fourth term because they love the Liberals. Obviously, that's not true. I have a different perspective. I'm going to ask you to like this video. It really helps us with our algorithm. We want to reach as many Canadians as possible. I couldn't believe it. We had nearly 500,000 live viewers with us last night. Despite some technical difficulties, it was a great broadcast. I really appreciate everyone who came on as new premium subscribers over at Juno News as well. We had a decision desk. We had a live chat for those premium subscribers. It was a really fun night. We broadcasted for, I think, a little over 7 hours. So you'll have to forgive me. I'm a little tired today. I'm going on, I think, less than 4 hours sleep. We finished a broadcast at 2 a.m. last night. I don't think I fell asleep until about 3. And then my children, they didn't know that there was an election last night, or they didn't care. So they had my husband and I up, I don't know, maybe 5:30 this morning. So going on very, very little sleep. But we will get to these key election takeaways. I wrote this on social media. I'm going to read through it here. These are my major takeaways from the election. So, you know the top line. The Liberals have won. Mark Carney is the Prime Minister. They won a minority. And the big takeaway was the total and utter collapse of the NDP. These are some of the facts, though, that you might not hear in legacy media. Number one, the Conservative Party of Canada had its best night ever. 7.9 million and counting. There's still some absentee ballots that are being counted right now in those early votes, but 7.9 million Canadians marked Conservative Party of Canada on their ballot. That represents 41.6% of the vote. That is historic. The Conservatives haven't had that high of a vote since 1988 when Brian Mulroney was party leader. And that was back when the party was called the Progressive Conservative Party. So since the new rebranding of the Conservative Party of Canada, they've never had anything like this. They've never had a victory with 7.9, basically 8 million Canadians voted for the Conservatives last night. That is the highest number in Canadian history. So some good news there. Yes, Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the party, he did lose his own seat. This was surprising to me. And I said this last night on the broadcast. I'll say it again. There was some shenanigans going on. I think that there needs to be an investigation into what happened in the riding. It doesn't make sense to me that the Conservatives can go from getting 51% of the vote in 2021. Pierre Poilievre has represented this riding for almost 2 decades. Usually party leaders have a huge boost, and yet Pierre Poilievre did lose his own riding of Carleton, in part, I will say, because of this ridiculous sabotage campaign that makes an utter complete mockery of our democracy, this thing called the Longest Ballot Initiative, where there was, I don't know, some 100 independent people that threw their names in, a bunch of pranksters trying to just confuse the voter. I don't think that's the only reason why Pierre Poilievre lost. I think that Ottawa is a government town. I think that his riding of Carleton, while it does represent a lot of the rural parts of the region, it's becoming more and more suburban. More and more suburbs in Ottawa are dominated by federal employees, and we know that the federal government and its unions are basically the base of the Liberal Party in the constituency. And so they managed to overtake Poilievre. Maybe he took his eye off the prize. He was campaigning coast to coast, helping all these local candidates push themselves across the finish line. And perhaps he did neglect his own Ottawa riding. It doesn't matter, though. He's still the leader of the party. Recall that Mark Carney became leader of the Liberal Party and Prime Minister when he did not have a seat in the House of Commons. Yes, it would be helpful for Pierre to have a seat, and I think at some point today we will hear a story of a Conservative candidate in a safe seat somewhere else in the country offering his seat up to Pierre Poilievre so that Poilievre can be a member of Parliament. This is a disappointment, but again, I think there's something foul here, and I would like to see an investigation. Overall, look, the votes are still being counted right now, and like I said, there's still the advanced votes. There's still a few seats that haven't been called, but this is based on our decision desk at Juno News and where we think the election results will finish. We have the Conservative Party of Canada picking up a net new 24 seats. Might be 23, 23, 24 net new seats. That is the biggest increase in the election. So some ways of looking at this, folks, the Conservatives picked picked up the most seats, 24 new seats. The Liberals also picked up some seats. It looks like they'll pick up around 11 seats. The NDP, of course, this is the story of the campaign, complete and utter collapse, down 19 seats in this election. It looks like they'll end up with 7 seats, so they will not make party status. Wow, what an utter fall from grace. I'll just say this, I don't think the party's completely over, though. Some people are saying this is the end of the NDP. I don't think so. I think that they'll regroup, they'll get a new party leader, out with Jagmeet Singh, push away that champagne socialist, that party pandering, that vote bank politics style, and bring in someone more mainstream, someone, a better retail style politics, maybe someone like former Alberta Premier Rachel Notley, current Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew, or maybe even someone like Avi Lewis, who is a famous journalist and sort of public intellectual who has a big following. He did run for the NDP in Vancouver and lost, but you never know. There are a lot of other candidates out there that I think that can capture the imagination of working class Canadians and more typical left-wing Canadians. I think that in the next election, the NDP will be back, and it'll be back to a normal election. This was a very abnormal election. So NDP pretty much wiped out, and then you also had the Bloc down 11. I said last night in the broadcast that I thought that Yves-François Blanchet did a pretty good job. Listening to him during the debates, I thought that he did really hit on some interesting points. But, you know, that wave of anti-Americanism, the media narrative around Trump, really stuck in the minds of a certain demographic of Canadians, enough to allow the Liberals to get that path to victory. Remember, we said that as long as the Bloc won something like 25 to 30 seats, the Liberals wouldn't win the election. It looks like the Bloc will finish with 23 seats, which did, in part, pave the path for the Liberals to win last night. Okay, next takeaway. Jagmeet Singh. Jagmeet Singh lost his seat. I think he will go down in history as one of the worst political actors in Canadian history, a totally useless leader, and I think that Canadians are all better off that he has lost. And yes, last night he did step down as leader. Okay, next, Maxime Bernier lost his riding, lost his own seat in the Beauce in Quebec. Again, not that surprising. He has lost several times in a row, and the vote of the PPC basically collapsed. I think a lot of the people who voted in protest for the PPC against the system back when Erin O'Toole was part of the COVID machine, you know, in lockstep with the other leaders, pushing for mandates, pushing for vaccines, and there was a lot of people rightfully protesting against that. The party didn't make as much sense this time around. Maxime Bernier was mostly out of the country, not really campaigning, and so it's not surprising that they didn't do very well. But the very, very small number of votes that the PPC got, specifically look at some ridings in and around Ontario, places like Brampton, places like Kitchener, a few hundred votes is all that separated the Liberals from the Conservatives, and that is what the PPC did. They acted as a spoiler, and they potentially helped Mark Carney with his victory win in those few key ridings. Look, folks, when you look at the numbers in and around the GTA, it is incredibly close, incredibly shocking. I was looking at the 905 where I live, and there were so many places where the Conservatives won with a majority of the vote, more than 50%. I'm just going to give you a few examples here because it's just so interesting. So for folks who don't know the shorthands for Toronto, the 416 is the area code for the sort of inner Toronto and the bureaus that actually make up like City Hall, the amalgamated city of Toronto. So I'm talking about Etobicoke, North York, Scarborough, and Toronto itself. And then you have the outer ring, and it kind of goes all the way out, but that's what we call the 905. It's based on the area code. And it's interesting because in some parts of the 905, especially sort of southwest of Toronto, the Liberals did pretty well. They won places like Burlington, Oakville, both the Oakville seats, Mississauga Lakeshore, and these Brampton seats that I'm saying, you know, they lost just by a tiny hair. But then if you go just outside, you get a lot of Conservative victories and big Conservative victories. So here in Milton East Halton Hills, the Conservatives won with 48.6% of the vote. Wellington, Halton Hills, Michael Chong won with 51.4% of the vote. Duffer and Caledon, Kyle Seaback gets 58% of the vote. Next, we have King Vaughan. Anna Roberts elected with 61%. Folks, these are like rural Alberta numbers. 61.8% in the 905 in King Vaughan. More, Vaughan Woodbridge, Conservatives won with 60% of the vote. In Thornhill, Melissa Lanceman won with 66% of the vote. Oh my goodness. And York Centre, Roman Baber, former MPP in Doug Ford's government, stepped down out of that caucus in protest of the Orwellian lockdown policies and the just complete and utter abuse of power by the Ford government, sat as an independent, ended up switching over federally, and wins with a big majority, again, 54.8% of the vote in York Center. Wow, interesting. Okay, Richmond Hill, another one. We have Conservatives at 52%, Richmond Hill South, Aurora Oak Ridge is Richmond Hill, 52.8% for Costas Menegakis. Interesting, we had a True North reporter there last night. Markham Unionville, the riding where Paul Cheung was a candidate, and he ended up getting ousted while he stepped down after the scandal with regards to the Chinese bounty story. He was replaced by Peter Yuan, and they lost. The Conservatives won with 50.9%. I could go on and on going around the 905. I think that this is really, really a good sign. The fact that Pierre Poilievre did this well, this close to Toronto, to me tells me that they captured something, and that there was a blue wave last night. Unfortunately, it just wasn't enough to form government, but there was a blue wave. Now, speaking of Ontario, Doug Ford in this election has been outed as a Liberal. He is a Liberal, folks. Yes, he runs under the banner of the Progressive Conservatives, but make no mistake, his government is a continuation of the Dalton McGuinty, Kathleen Wynne, big spending, big government, deficit spending, low growth, low productivity, Ontario in decline government. There's no getting around it. They push terrible education policies and woke social policies, and it is just incredibly disappointing. So him and his cronies interfered in this election. They put out stories, planted stories to try to deflate and defeat Pierre Poilievre, and guess what? All this talk about the idea that Pierre Poilievre needs to learn from Ford and that Ford did like a master class on how to win in Ontario, that just doesn't hold up by the facts. Let me just tell you, Doug Ford won his election in February, just 3 months ago, with 42.9% of the vote. Okay, last night, Pierre Poilievre got 44.5% of the vote in Ontario. He outperformed Doug Ford. So I don't want to hear anymore about how Poilievre needs to make nice with Doug Ford, follow his lead, buddy up with Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney. No, 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 no. That is not going to happen. And you know what? Rightly so. I'm not the only one that feels this way. Conservative MP who was reelected last night in Bowmanville, Oshawa North. I'm talking about Jamil Javani, friend of the show. Actually, him and I moderated the 2021 Conservative debate together. He's a really nice guy. He was reelected last night. And you know what? He was at the end of his rope when it came to the Ontario Progressive Conservatives. Here is his rant against Doug Ford. This is brilliant. Let's play that clip.
Doug Ford just went through an election. I have differences of opinion with him. I don't like how he's managed healthcare or education. But out of respect, we didn't say anything. Federal party, we didn't get in his way. When it was our turn to run an election, he couldn't stay out of our business. Always getting his criticisms and all his opinions out, distracting our campaign, trying to make it about him, trying to position himself as some kind of political genius that we needed to be taking cues from.
Was it him specifically? Was it his campaign manager, Corey, tonight? Do you see Doug Ford as a problem for the federal party in the outcome of this race?
I see Doug Ford as a problem for Ontario and for Canada. I think he's not doing a great job in running this province, and now he's trying to exercise his influence over other levels of government, and it's not like this guy is doing anything particularly well. I mean,
you did used to work for him.
I did. I'm speaking from experience. I tried to fix problems in this province, and he kept getting in his way and all his goons around him all the time. They wouldn't make anything better, and now we're seeing him because this guy's a political genius because he beat Bonnie Crombie and Stephen Del Duca, and now we got to sit around getting advice from him? No. He has taken the provincial Conservative Party and turned it into something hollow, unprincipled, something that doesn't solve problems. He's glad-handing with Chrystia Freeland, having coffees and lattes with Mark Carney, and I'm sitting here saying we need to be fighting for change and something new and something different, not being a hype man to the Liberal Party.
Jamil Javani is 100% right. Congratulations to him for being reelected. I want to go through some other big wins from the party. People who are friends with the Candice Malcolm Show have been guests here on the show. First, Dr. Matt Strauss. He was elected in the riding of Kitchener South Hespeler. Congratulations to Matt. Next, Andrew Lawton, our good friend Andrew Lawton, longtime colleague of mine at True North. Before that, he was a radio host in London. He won decisively yesterday in his riding of Elgin, St. Thomas, London South. Congratulations, Andrew. We look forward to seeing what you do in Ottawa. Next, Aaron Gunn. Aaron Gunn is a former colleague of mine at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. He became a documentary filmmaker, another friend of True North and the program, despite a very coordinated attack from him, from the leftist media, trying to sink him, saying he held unacceptable views, crazy, controversial things like defending Sir John A. Macdonald against the most insane accusations. And no, didn't work. Couldn't take Aaron Gunn down. Aaron Gunn was elected in the riding of North Island, Powell River. Congratulations. And finally, David Bexty, I mentioned off the top of the show, Cian Bexty's father was elected in an absolute landslide in Bow River. So we love to see it. Lots of new faces are going to be in Ottawa. Look, Mark Carney thinks that he won the election last night, and I read through the numbers. Yes, he got the highest numbers in terms of popular vote and seats. They picked up 11, but again, the Conservatives picked up more. The Conservatives had the momentum. There was a blue wave. It wasn't enough to push them over the top. But Mark Carney last night just kind of let his worst side out. He was making partisan jabs at Pierre Poilievre. He reiterated this nonsense that our relationship with the United States is over, sort of turning the anti-Americanism up to overdrive. I didn't like the tone of his speech whatsoever. I don't think he's going to preside over a very stable government. I predict there will be another election inside 2 years. We will be here for it. We will be ready for it. Last night, our goal was to replace the CBC. Look, we didn't quite get there, okay? Our numbers didn't quite match what the CBC were, but we're on our way. We have our work cut out for us. We're going to continue to work incredibly hard to provide Canadians with fact-based news, reporting that they can trust, and an alternative to the CBC. I think the major difference between Juno News and the CBC is that you know where we stand. You know our values. We are open about them. We are open about the fact that myself, Cian Bexty, many of us here at Juno News, we are conservative. We are small C conservatives. We have conservative values. We love our country. We love Canada, and we're unapologetic about that. We want the best for our country. Whereas at the CBC, they lie to you. They tell you that they are completely neutral, complete arbiters of the truth, that they are unbiased, and that they don't put their finger on the scale one way or another. Well, the mask is starting to slip. I think it's completely off. But they just cannot help themselves. And there are so many examples last night of the CBC reporters just openly cheerleading for the Liberals. We'll play a few clips here. First, here's CBC's Adrienne Arsenal saying that she was very relieved to see that Charlottetown was okay. Of course, she's talking about when the votes were coming in and it was obvious that the Liberals were going to win. She said that she's very relieved to see that they're okay. Let's play that clip.
Well, I'm very relieved to see that Charlottetown is okay.
Good.
We're getting first results from Charlottetown. Let's have a look at that.
And to that Rosemary Barton quip, right back, glad to see Charlottetown is doing okay. I don't understand. Like, are you actually just openly cheering for the Liberals on your broadcast? Because that's pretty embarrassing. You might as well just come right out and be honest about it. Do what I just did. Do your acknowledgement. Say, look, everybody, I'm a partisan Liberal. I love Mark Carney. I'm here to promote him. He's giving me billions and billions of dollars to stay afloat. Fine. Be honest about it. Be authentic instead of this charade that you are objective and that you're not cheering for one party or another. Let's play that Rosemary Barton clip.
Thank you for that, Adrienne. Glad that Charlottetown's doing fine. Me too. Yeah, we like it there.
Okay, just a couple of final points. The pollsters in the legacy media were dead wrong about the campaign. They said that the Liberals were going to win in a landslide. Just about all of them predicted a Liberal majority. That did not happen. I believe that Juno News' predictions were the most accurate. I'm going to read through them for you right now. So Juno News' decision desk and our in-house pollster at this election had the following projections. So we projected 165 seats for the Liberals. As of right now, they're at 168. We projected 150 seats for the Conservatives. Right now, they are at somewhere around 145. We projected 3 seats for the NDP. As of right now, they are about 7. Look, that's about as close as you get. And I believe we were much, much closer than the legacy media. So not only are we trying to make the CBC irrelevant, trying to replace the CBC, I think that we found a way to poll Canadians in a way that's much more accurate than all of the fancy pollsters and all of the people who get paid big, big bucks. Part of what they were doing was trying to deflate Conservatives, trying to encourage Conservatives to stay home. It didn't work. It didn't work. And you know what? I would have guessed that the morning after Pierre Poilievre defeat, if Mark Carney wins the election, I would guess that I would have been pretty depressed, pretty unhappy, and looking towards these ideas. I think there's movements of Wexit or Alberta separatism, that we'd be at the point where we'd be like, enough of this country, something has to change, let's move on. But that's not how I'm feeling today. I think the Canadians are waking up to the truth. 8 million Canadians voted to take back our future last night. I think that that is an incredibly optimistic sign. Young Canadians showed up and voted for the Conservatives. New Canadians showed up and voted for Conservatives. Pierre Poilievre has built a new coalition. Like I said, he did better than any previous leader, and I actually feel quite good. I think that we are waking up, we live on to fight another day, and that we are going to take our country back, folks. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow with all the news. I'm Candice Malcolm. This is the Candice Malcolm Show. Thank you, and God bless.